going to talk about underwear for the next 20 minutes, but hopefully with lessons to take away for any consumer business that's trying to go from 500 to 2 million. And so basically, for me, the words the first 500 actually has special meaning. True&Co actually started when I bought 500 bras on my Amex and put them in my living room and invited women to come over and try on these bras and tell me what they thought. And in the early days, I was actually the one who was fitting them and matching them to the right bra without any bra fitting experience, and that's kind of how we started. And also, prior to our launch, we had exactly 500 signups on the True&Co service before we came out and launched at a public technology conference. And we instantly went from 500 to day one, 21,000 signups. Next day, 23,000 signups, and on it went, tens of thousands of signups later. And that first inflection point for us was pretty amazing. The second one that has actually led us to where we are today was when we actually took all this information and all this data that women were sharing with us about their bodies, their lives, and their bras, and we actually launched our own physical products based on that data. And today, actually over 1% of American women have taken a True&Co Fit quiz, which is pretty amazing. And so in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about how we got there. And so I was a VC before I started True&Co, and when I was a VC, product market fit was everything. And that's how an investor should think, because we're thinking about the exit, and we're thinking about what's going to happen 20 years from now when you IPO and all that kind of stuff. And yet, as a founder and as a person trying to create a product for a consumer, it has to be a lot more personal and a lot more intimate than that when you first start. So instead of thinking about 1% of the American female population or the world, because bras are a big business, there's actually 100 million women in the United States alone who wear one every day. We thought about how do we get that first 20,000? And how do we think about product customer fit by answering 3 key questions. So first of all, who is she? Who is our early target customer, our first 20,000? What does she look like? What does she believe? The second is, and the second and third are kind of trade-offs against each other. So the second thing is about trust. How do we build the trust and the credibility and the expectation with these women while at the same time offering them novelty and something completely different and new, because that's what you do as a startup, right? So balancing trust and novelty, which often are at odds with each other, is definitely one of the first conceptual challenges that we started to think about as we designed the True&Co service. And so I can tell you very early on we decided who our early target customer was not going to be. These guys, or Silicon Valley in general. And there's a lot of women here today who have come up to me and say, hey, I'm wearing a True&Co bra, and I'm like, great, you don't need to show me, but thank you. But we're not targeting women of Silicon Valley, actually. And I was reminded 10 days after we launched, I received a phone call at the True&Co offices, and I spoke to one of the women who were our early target customers. And she said, even at my age, I'm telling you, I'm from West Virginia, I'm 63 years old, I do a lot of yoga and bird watching, and I'm looking for a bra that's going to make me look good coming out of yoga class, because even at my age, it matters. And this was a really vivid depiction of who we were going for. I'm not saying that we have 60-year-olds as our core demographic, but basically we have discovered that between the ages of 23 and 83 is where our customers are. And they're of all socioeconomic statuses, they're all across the United States, and the only thing that we can find in common about them is actually psychographic. And that psychographic profile of our early target customer was an ever-curious woman who was looking to discover something unique about herself. And she was incredibly educated, and she was quite intellectual. And that was the psychographic that we hit early on and what we tried to design for. So the other thing that we noticed, the second observation is almost anthropological in a way, is that, and this, by the way, is a little thing that BuzzFeed did with us and that ended up on the Today Show. And this is all the True&Co data about, we called it the United States of undies. And what this shows is actually how different these women are depending on which state they live in, right? Which is only one of the many differences and nuances between, the millions of women who've taken the quiz. So you got people like state of Washington who define sexy lingerie as multicolored flannel pajamas, right? And then you have people in Vermont who really like the sexy bodysuit thing. And what this is really indicating to us is that every woman is going out there into the marketplace, at least in intimate apparel market, and saying, I want to choose what lingerie means to me. I want to choose what makes me unique. I want to define sexy my way. And this was a major insight that actually caused us to believe that a revolution was coming in retail. And so this was our vision that was worth fighting for, right? Which is, you see the beautiful model, clothes look great on her, but women are asking themselves, looks great on her, but which one is actually for me? Which one is going to make me look like $1 million? And that was the problem that we were trying to solve. So what we built was a uniquely personal experience for every woman. And what we first did with our customers was we had the belief that she knew her body best. And if you know anything about bra fitting, it's actually one of the most terrible experiences that any person can go through. You get stuck in a fitting room for multiple hours, and the control is taken out of your hands and put into the hands of what they call a bra fitter. In our case, we actually created a quiz that allowed women to tell us where they thought their issues were. It was that simple, and what they wanted. And that quiz was a gateway drug to basically enter into this universe of True&Co, where we have no stylist, but there's a system behind the scenes that takes all that quiz data and generates 6,000 flavors of a personal shopping experience in real time. So you go into your shop, you only see styles and sizes just for you, and then we use the data further, we track what you browse, what you purchase, and we also build into the purchase process a reacquisition mechanism, right, in this virtuous cycle of data, where a woman will come to us and tell us exactly how she liked that product. It's a bunch of multiple choice, there's a bunch of free text, we analyze all that stuff, and we do a couple things with it. We remake her shop and refine her selections based on what she's told us. We call it dynamic personalization, and we're thinking about a relationship with her over years. You know, the bra perpetuity is kind of, you know, what we live for. And then the second thing that we've done with it is actually take that data and put it into our supply chain to actually make better products at scale. So one interesting thing that we actually worked out over time, this interesting psychological, I guess, quirk of our early target customer, was she only felt it was personalized if she could see what was recommended for her right next to what was not recommended for her. So she wanted to see what she could not have. And so over time, we actually developed what we called a Fits You sort of banner, where we gave it to her in a normal e-commerce shopping experience so that she could shop both ways with us, a personal shop as well as the normal e-commerce shopping way. And then what we also did was we took that data, like I said, and we talk about created to fit. And so Wired Magazine actually quoted us as saying last year, where we've taken all this data to create physical goods with differences for every single one of these 6,000 different body types. We're not overturning mass production. We don't do custom production. But what we're doing is we are powering every single product decision, whether it's colors, whether it's styles, the sizes that we offer for each woman based on what she's telling us through the quiz. And so this is all based around the principle of she knows her body best. And this was a really, really important insight for us in how we designed the quiz to be the organic traffic acquirer that it is, or the email sign-up acquisition engine that it is. And so when we talk about fit, we don't just talk about band and cup size, or even what size of jeans that you wear. That's only one aspect, right? The most important thing to us, actually, in 2/3 of our data points, we have like over 50 million data points now about women, probably one of the largest data sets of its kind in the world. And so we actually focus a ton, 2/3 of our data points are actually on the topic of emotional fit, which is not what band and cup size I am, but what do I want to see when I look in the mirror, right? What do I want to emphasize? What do I not want to emphasize? And those things are very important. And we're adding on in our algorithm and behind the scenes, we're constantly, every month we're releasing a new version of this algorithm and A/B testing them against each other. And we're starting to dig into the world of visual style, which is slightly different than emotional fit. So at first we focused on technical and emotional, by accident really. We were just asking questions that made sense to women. But now we saw that they fell into two categories. We added in the visual style element, and then over time, we actually think that there's a ton of learning and data and awesome recommendations that you can do for women if you just know what their value quality trade-off is, because every woman is willing to pay a certain price for something. And so, as you can see, we're not just focused on, here's the one bra that I'm going to give to you after doing a scan of your body or something like that. Instead, we're tailoring an experience for women that truly feels personalized and offering them the products to match. So one of the things that is often discussed is, how you can hack your way to like a really optimized funnel, particularly when you're doing quizzes and things like that, or email sign-up mechanism like this. I would say that 20% of the answer comes from the optimizations and the hacking, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've learned in case it's helpful to you. But the 80% of it was actually the major insight that the quiz was actually the right thing to do for our customers. And that would be the question that I would ask all of you, if you're thinking about it, why would your target customer take the time to answer all these questions and give you all this information? And in our particular case, for us, bras equals credibility. We can ask any question under the sun about your relationships, your body, your kids. It's all related to intimate apparel. And there's a real credible reason that women find for us asking that. The second would be we introduced something new. We were actually, and this was the novelty aspect, we were one of the first to tell the consumer about this new dimension called shape, which shape of your breast is just as important as the band and cup size. And that was a major insight, and women were like, wow, I got it, this totally makes sense. And the questions did make sense to her. When she went through the quiz, she said to herself, page after page and question after question, and we saw this in all the early testing that we did. They're like, wow, why hasn't anyone actually thought of these things? And yes, I can totally believe that these questions are going to help me find a better bra and discover more about my body. We do something with the quiz results, so we generate that personalized experience and that personalized shop, which is super important. That is the payoff. And I'll tell you a little bit later, but some of the testing that we've done, there are ways to sort of preview that to the customer so that you do boost the sign-up rate. There's sometimes some adverse consequences. And then finally, the pain point of bra fitting was so real and so intense that the word bra was uber emotional. And the day we launched, the next 5 days, we had literally 50 pieces of original press around the world talking about an algorithm for your boobs. Like all kinds of sensationalistic headlines and titles to get clicked on. Lots of Daily Mail UK fodder, essentially. And we've been in Daily Mail UK quite a few times now. In terms of, once you've got that out of the way, the 80% of the equation, right, which is whether a quiz is right for you, there are some ways that you can optimize. So I talked about the trade-off between trust and novelty. There's another sort of spectrum that we think about, which is called the comfort spectrum, between scary and really uncomfortable and less scary. And balancing those two versus the trust and novelty is the experience that we're trying to create to get these women through the quiz quickly. So one of the things that we really debated early on, now this seems like common sense, right? A first question that is scary and uncomfortable if you make her work too hard for it. Does that seem obvious? And yet for us, we had many, many debates internally because we wanted to show how different we were. And we felt that if we asked her what her bra size is as the very first question, she would immediately dismiss us as yet another filter or something like that, and that's not what we're about. There's actually an algorithm behind the scenes that's doing all this hard work. And so we debated really hard. Do we ask her what shape she is with a bunch of illustrations and have this new concept? And that was our first question for a really long time. And when we finally actually tested it, we realized that on the spectrum of trust versus novelty, the novelty should probably come later on in the quiz. And the first 3 questions is where you're going to get your mega drop-off. And so what you want to do is you want to ease them into the True&Co world with a question not necessarily that sounds like everyone else, but rather a question that she's familiar with and allows her to complain about a problem. And in our particular case, it was, and women will identify with this, is your bra strap slipping. So that is the classic question, and you ask, hey, if your bra strap is slipping, yes, absolutely. Wow, I can't believe you noticed that, and you're going to do something with that information. Let me click over to the next page and see some more. Language. So we talked a lot about language, but also the way in which you structure the questions. Again, fill in the blanks was a big design thing. I think when True&Co first introduced their quiz, we actually opted in favor of multiple choice and clicking around to give her the choices, because fill in the blank was something that she had to think about, and as soon as she had to think about it, she would stop proceeding through the quiz. And generally, our best results actually come from women who do it super quick, within 2 to 5 minutes. If they take 10 to 20 minutes to list every single problem, then that's a more complicated customer to serve. So we actually want these customers moving quickly and thinking instinctively about topics. And some people say, can you trust these women to self-report? You absolutely can, if you have tricky topics, you actually triangulate to the right answer by using multiple questions, and you do it really quickly, just to keep that velocity going. Something else that's super scary and uncomfortable, photos. Photos are really, half-naked women are really uncomfortable to women, particularly when you are asking them to diagnose themselves. So we actually tested photos versus illustrations. Women also take, like, imagine that 63-year-old in West Virginia. She's not a fan of taking a photo of herself either, right? So our world, this is why we have illustrations which allow every single woman to actually connect, and see herself in the image. And then finally, and this is always a sensitive topic with a business like this, desktop with coworkers watching, probably not the best thing. When we actually rolled out our mobile quiz, that was actually a really big change for us. And we particularly see it on weekends and evenings, activity stepping up. And it's actually up to us to try to figure out now how do we bring that experience to desktop and still keep it private and personal. So that's kind of the comfort spectrum at work. A couple other things that were super counterintuitive, actually, but are really fascinating because it tells you about, again, the psychographic, the mind of our female customer. Take your time. So when the questions are relevant, a longer quiz really does not matter. And there's no need to cut it off prematurely. A woman will keep answering and answering and answering questions, and actually it does boost your sign-up rate and your purchase rate. We didn't believe these results. We actually A/B tested them 3 different times over the course of 8 months, and the result was always the same, statistically significant. Explaining the value proposition at the beginning, the quiz intro, helpful in conversion rate of the final purchase, but not necessarily for sign-ups. So what we're doing most likely was, this is our hypothesis, is we're getting much more qualified candidates to start and finish the quiz now that they realize what the objective of the quiz is. And so we decided to keep that. I talked about photos before, and that's probably just going to be the last part of my presentation, which is the power of good creative. And as a founder at your stage right now, good photography costs a ton of money. And so, this is what we ended up coming up with in our first 500. This is a woman walking down Fifth Avenue, actually, in her underwear. It's a quite unfortunate photo shoot. And we basically decided 3 weeks before launch, we had an amazing opportunity to present, nationally. And we understood that our target customer valued design and aesthetic. And in fact, a lot of her is a creative class, and that still continues to this day. And so we actually changed from the clinical, red, yellow sort of stuff in the top left corner and the uncomfortable photo shoot to actually a whole new front-end design of the entire site. All the pieces that we could reskin in about 3 weeks' time, in addition to arranging the press tour, and in addition to try to finding fulfillment and trying to find enough bras to actually ship out. And so this was actually a big investment on our part, and it continues to this day, because we used to use just bra silos. We're actually finding that our psychographic is rejecting the imagery that she's usually seeing in the media, the Victoria's Secret angel imagery. And she actually does want to have a diversity of shapes and bodies presented beautifully, always beautifully, and that actually does help her convert a lot more than, say, an illustration in a purchase context or a picture of just a plain bra. And so what we're doing right now at True&Co is we're actually creating a new visual vocabulary. This is super exciting for us. We've always been design and aesthetic driven. We just started thinking about how do we promote this to the world in terms of images that show the shape diversity and show women the uniqueness, celebrating the unique self. And so we're spending a ton of time on that. And we're also thinking more and more of pushing the boundary on product customer fit, realizing the challenges that she's facing as a woman. So that actually led us to create last year a runway program that, because we realized many of our women were in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, late 30s, thinking of having their first child and also trying to balance their career. And we decided to vote with our feet by creating one of the first startup leadership programs for women. So essentially, if you can get unlimited maternity leave at True&Co. Not all of it can be paid, it's as much of it as we can afford, but we're allowing you to ramp in and out of maternity leave because we're bringing in other women who have just had children and want to return to the workforce in a leadership capacity. And so you can see that all the elements for True&Co. as we march towards hopefully 5% of the American women, 10% of the American women, hopefully 100% of the American women at some point, we're pulling all these levers to make sure that we maintain closeness to the customer and that we really do keep preaching this product customer fit throughout the life of True&Co. So thanks for hearing my story, and yeah, thank you.